So today, the thought today was to kind of go more in depth into some of the things that we talked about in our past meetings. So mostly researching colleges, kind of what that would look like, emailing colleges, and then some of those questions that we have for if you do get on the phone with the college coach or if you go engage in a visit once the visits are back to being allowed, kind of what questions you can ask when you're on campus. So to start off, I wanted to just show our grid that we have created for helping research colleges. Can you see this, Skylar? Okay, so this is the grid we created, and we're going to send this out and give this resource to everybody in the club so they have it, but maybe you'd want to add something specific that you're looking for in a college as one of the columns too, if there is something on here or something missing from here that you think pertains to you. But basically it's laying out, okay, what are the college things that we can kind of track? Where is it located, the size, what level of soccer would it be, the tuition, the majors, like college specific things. And then we kind of turn into some maybe soccer questions to fill out. So what conference do they play in? What place are they in conference? Maybe their roster size, how many players actually play. So if they have a roster of 35, but only about 15 of them play more than half the minutes, then you know that there's a chance you could be in that program and sitting potentially on the bench for more than half the time. So it's just something to note. What their player retention is like, how long their head coach has been at the program, because that kind of will tell you a little bit about how established it is, or if it's one that's still kind of deciding, bringing in their own players and deciding, what kind of style and stuff that they'll be playing within their conference. And then the details to be able to contact them when you are reaching out to coaches. So their names, their contact information, the assistants, and then maybe a column for other things that maybe stood out to you in the process. So this is the one that we created that we will share. But certainly if you have additions you want to add, you can. So if you're going about doing this, I'm going to use the University of Minnesota just because I'm familiar with it and it's the local college around here. So the first thing would be to get on the college website. Right, so just their typical website. That's where you can get a lot of the general information. Right, it's located in Minneapolis. It has the address typically on the bottom. Right, you can type into the search engines are always really good on colleges. So you can write in there enrollment. Right, and you might be able to come and find what their enrollment's like, or you could write, go back and search University of Minnesota admittance rate or something like that, if that's something that you're looking and hoping to find. And then the tuition. Whoops. Right, is another one of those things that typically you can, you would be able to kind of jump on, right, and navigate, okay, what is the tuition fees, what is the total in-state, out-of-state from different schools that you'd be looking at. And then from there, you maybe would want to find their athletic page. So the way to do that would be to do the same college, but then write athletics at the end. And that works for most colleges. And then you'll be able to get into their main page. Typically, you're going to want to sort by your sport. Right, and then you get to where you can maybe look for some of these things that we laid out from a soccer standpoint. So clicking on their schedule is a good place to start. Usually it tells you kind of notes what conference they're in. This is BTN, which is the Big Ten. If you don't know, you can also Google like University of Minnesota, what conference is it in, and that would pop up. So that's one way to get to it, is through the schedule, or you can just Google those things separately. And then it's good to note those things for reasons. When you look at like the NCAA, some conferences will get more than one person into the national tournament at the end of the year, and some maybe is limited to one. So that's kind of one of the main reasons why you'd want to know kind of the conference you're in or how much they travel. So if you look, the Big Ten conference, you're playing at Rutgers in Maryland. So you're on the East Coast, right? You're playing at home versus these teams, but there's a lot of Midwest travel, maybe right at that 6-hour mark or a little bit longer. I believe Indiana is closer to 12. So you just kind of get a sense for, okay, how much school would I potentially be missing, right? How much am I going to travel? And how competitive is the conference as a whole, and how many of those teams will get into the national tournament at the end of the year. You can also see what their record was always on the schedule. So this year, the Gophers were 3-12-4. It's also sometimes good to get more than a 1-year picture because you just never know with graduating classes or injury. So you can kind of see, okay, that's where they were this year. What were they the year before? They had 12 wins the year before. Kind of what is their like 5-year history is always something to look at, the trend of it. So as you can see, the majority of the time they have, 11 plus wins, which is traditionally a good record. And there's just something that happened in 2019 that's kind of out of the norm. So if it's a program you're looking at, maybe you're saying, okay, just something happened that year, I can ask about it potentially, or like on the whole, I think it's probably going to be similar to the other years that I've seen.
Hey, Krystle, just out of curiosity, Do you have any insight towards what did happen with the Gophers program in 2019, other than you were not there?
Yeah. Yeah. They graduated. If you look at their 2018, and that's another thing we're going to look at, but when you go and look on their stats, if you go through and look at their individual stats and sort it by, this is 19. Their individual stats for 2018, and you sort it by points even, right, which it normally naturally does, or minutes, right? You can just see kind of where it is. So it's senior, right? Senior. It was just a really good graduating senior class, particularly when you sort it by points, right? They're 33 points and they're 14 points both graduated that year. So might have just been a year where they were trying to figure out who was going to step up and score, and they just didn't have that goal scorer kind of fill in, right? As you can see in 2019, right, the most goals that anybody had was 2, right? So it's going to be hard to win games without scoring goals. But good question, Skylar. While we're sitting on this stats, this is a good place to look, right? So sorting by minute, sometimes that's not an option on some websites. This one it is, but just going through and saying, okay, they played 19 games, right? You can put on your calculator and divide times 19 times 45 minutes. That'd be half the game on average. Now there's going to be some overtimes in those things. So some people might be higher than that, but 19 times 45, right? So 855 would be playing half the games, right? So that's one of the things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of their players kind of plays over half the time. And then another kind of group is, not too far behind. So if you're looking at it, you're saying, okay, they're playing roughly probably 15 players are getting, significant roles within the game, whether it's starting minutes or coming off the bench and contributing for a decent amount of minutes. And so that statistics is one of those things that you could look at to try to get, okay, how many people are playing number of minutes, or what is their roster size, right? So you can click on their roster, but then you can also turn around and look and count how many people they have on their stats, because these are ones that have entered a game, right? So if their roster is 30 and then they only have, 21 players listed on the stats, then there's 9 players on their roster that never even got into a game this year. So that's another like little special thing you can kind of look for as you navigate. The other thing you can do looking in the roster, a lot of times they'll tell you maybe where people are from. So maybe you're looking at a college that doesn't recruit out of Minnesota regularly, and it might just mean that they don't come to events that Minnesota players are at, or they haven't had success. Doesn't mean that you couldn't go there still, but there's more potential for, okay, maybe I have to go to their camp because they don't traditionally kind of recruit in this area. Or sometimes there's something working against you. Like I know California schools, sometimes they have to hit a certain number of California residents or roster from California, and they are limited on how many they could get from other states. You have something, Skylar?
I just have another question.
Yeah.
I just go back about 30 seconds, but as you're talking about the number of the players on the roster that actually play, or the percentage of the players, like what does that say to you? Like if you see that and you see, oh wow, all 30 players have at least contributed, or wow, only 60% of the players on the roster are contributing. I mean, what kind of insight do you have in terms of what that means? What story does that tell to you?
Yeah, I think more of it is just painting the picture of what it could be, and then being willing to sign on for it. So if 15%, say 15 players of their 30-person roster are playing half the game, okay, then I know there's a 50% chance that I'll be playing less than half of a game if I get into this program, which that shouldn't deter you. It's not uncommon. But it just tempers expectations, because a lot of times when you're graduating from high school, you've been on club teams where you've played significant minutes, or on high school teams where you played significant minutes. And college might be the first major time where you get in there and you find yourself not playing. And it's not like high school where potentially you didn't make it as you weren't gonna play any minutes as a ninth grader, so you made the ninth grade team, or the 10th grade team, they moved you up to more of the JV team to get some exposure and minutes. You may be spending that entire year never playing in an actual competition. You might just be a just training player. And it's just something you got to know, okay, if that's the case, and I could see that this is one of the best schools I'm looking at, then there's a potential that I would have to come on, play limited minutes my first year, and earn my way as I got older. It's just good to have that expectation in the back of your mind. So when you get there and you don't play, you're not blindsided by that. So that's what it would tell me. If it was that there's a 30-person roster and only 20 kids play, like that's a big deal to know, okay, even if I'm on the roster, I'm not guaranteed to get into any game, because a lot of schedules are really difficult. The in-conference games for teams that have to win their conference, you can't really take risks to put some people in. And the out-of-conference games, it's not like you play a lot of opponents that are super far away from you, so you're not trying to just find games to get everybody on the roster in the game, which is a little different than club. I think sometimes in club soccer that's able to shake out a little bit more, so you can spread minutes around. Maybe if you're playing a game that doesn't necessarily win you premier status, or gets you to advance in state cup, then maybe you can spread the minutes around a little bit more. In college, it gets a lot more picky about minutes, I think, across all levels. But there is some opportunity at certain colleges. I know earlier I said that there's not really an opportunity to gain that experience. Some college environments, like Division III, some programs have that opportunity to, okay, if maybe I'm not playing on like the first varsity team, but there is a second team game where I can get some of those minutes exposure. So that's something that I didn't add on the questions, but that's something to think about when you're clicking places too. Just if there is an opportunity to get game exposure, or if not playing in games means you're totally going to be a practice player for years at a time. I also like to get onto their roster, besides just seeing where they're from and if that's something that I fit into as a player. I would sort by class. Right, so you can count and get a sense for how big their roster size is. 1, 2, 3. 19, which is a really tight roster. This is, I think, this is for just for the spring. Yeah, this might just be their spring roster. They might have shifted. But 19 players is not that much. So they probably had a decent opportunity to come right in and contribute on a 19-person roster. Majority maybe travel. If there's a 30-person roster, they probably don't travel everyone to games. So that's something that maybe you can ask and inquire about. But then when you sort it by class, you can see, okay, so say I'm a 2021 graduate and I'm looking at the University of Minnesota. So in 2019, they're going to graduate. Yeah, see, they don't have any seniors. So this is their spring one. So next year, these juniors will be seniors. They'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seniors that will be graduating at the end of 2020. So that's, maybe I'm going to be one of 5 that they bring in. And sometimes they bring in classes different size than the ones they graduate. Maybe they brought in some the class before, but right, 5 spots for the entire nation recruiting is probably tight. So it's just something to think about kind of as you navigate through that part. Another thing to note, which we put into the matrix that we made, is it's good to look at the coach's bio. So on the roster, a lot of times it says go to coaching staff. and you can get to that. This head coach, right? You can kind of see what it says she started. I know she started in 2012, but you can scroll through and be able to tell. Sometimes they put their overall records on the bottom of the page. A lot of colleges do, but she started in 2012, which means that she's 7 years in, 7 seasons in. She probably has established the way she wants to play and what type of recruits fit her. And the team probably knows right through the recruiting process what they're signing up for. There's not going to be a lot of transition. You wouldn't imagine there's going to be a ton of players coming in and exiting because it is established. Sometimes when it's younger. So the other day I researched for somebody Xavier's page, and she's in her 2nd year. And you see there's a lot less retention kind of going on because they're in this transitional period where they're taking a group that has been trained under another coach and they're putting an entirely new training system, training staff, spending time to get to know each other. So the person I was talking to about potentially going there, she was going to get on the phone, and I said, you know, how would you feel like being on a team where maybe some of those things are transitioning and they're trying to bring new ideas? You'd be one of their players they brought in. And she was like, that really excites me. And I thought, okay, well, mentioning that you did that research, you know, it's in a transitional period, that there's going to be some people on the team that are struggling with buy-in, right? And some people that will, and that excites you and you want to be a part of buying into the coach right away, because that differentiates you from maybe the next person who's researching that school or writing to them. So just something to look at. Are they in transition or are they kind of an established place? Let's see. Yeah, and then after that, if I'm researching a school, I'd say I'd get these matrix filled out, and then I would go start to look at their social media to see if you can find out a little bit more what they're about. One of the avenues for that is certainly Instagram, Twitter. Some teams snap or their athletic department snaps. But you can kind of see, okay, right, there's a lot of celebration. You can see kind of the stands sometimes and what the environment could look like, right? Training. They value training. Up here, they value lifting, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't probably post that work rate that they do in the weight room, right? You have a girl wearing a U.S. soccer. Some first years gaining their jackets, right? So you can kind of look like they have a little bit of fun on their team, some wigs, right? Some team gatherings, right? So you get kind of a sense for what maybe the program and team stands for a little bit. Through these avenues. Another thing, I forgot to mention, getting on their news and looking at the stories they post can tell you more, right? So this is finding out more about the player that plays for the U20 national team, right? Maybe some of the stuff that they care about as a program or school, Big Ten honors, scholarship, that kind of stuff, right? And then maybe just how certain games went, right? So those are just some things to look at. Right, so after you've done it, you came in, you filled out your matrix, you got your 20 schools or so that you're really considering. The next step would be to write them, right? So this part where you're filling it out, sometimes you can click on the roster, the coaching staff, and they will have their names and their email addresses and phone numbers sitting right by their name and picture. Sometimes they don't have that. The best way to find it otherwise is to get on the athletic directory. Traditionally, they have a directory, staff directory, right? So if they didn't have it on their own website, then you can get on the staff directory on someone's website, scroll down until you find individual sports, right? Baseball, men's basketball. So you scroll down until you find soccer. Holy moly. Right, and then here they all are, and you could click on them that way. Right, they link it, but sometimes they just have it kind of sitting right onto that staff directory. So if you can't find it through their website, try that. The other thing that you potentially want to do on their website before you write them, get back to women's soccer. Recruits. Right, most programs have one of these on their website. Either say questionnaire or it'll say like recruiting or recruits that you can click on. And by filling this out, you automatically get put into their recruiting database. Most programs have it set up where they know the difference between players that they entered and players that have entered themselves. But just getting in there gives them an opportunity to send you invites to camps, lets you know if there's visit dates coming up, more about their program, more about the campus. So it's just a good way to get kind of more information. After you fill out the questionnaire, I would still follow up with the email and say, I've filled out the questionnaire, I'm really interested, and kind of keep that conversation going. So I've been through this before, but we'll just show some of the stuff that we sent out before. So these are the kind of the big things to put in your introductory email for the first time you've written. Biggest, most important things is making sure you include your name, obviously, but your grad year is a really, really big one. I mentioned that in the conversation yesterday, just so they know if they can write you back or not, because some divisions are restricted in what they can communicate and how. If you are younger than what they can communicate with, they will most likely send you an invite to camp that just shows like they got their information and it's an opportunity to get to know them better. So you'd most likely receive something like that back, or a link to their questionnaire. Listing your accomplishments or strength or something that showcases your interest in them and something that would make them interested in you is really important. And then how they can see you next. And then attaching a more detailed player profile and a more detailed highlight video or something that they could be able to watch, which we have sent information for how to do that, to make one of those. The other thing would be, we've provided a template. You can certainly adjust this on your own, but this is where you can maybe do some more of your academic and athletic achievements, if you have those, or putting some of your high school information down. But this is more of like where you would put some of your selling points and more information about you versus throwing all this information into an email, because that's going to make people kind of glaze over it. So email should be short, concise, right? Gain attention. And then the template can be a little bit more informational. And then this is an example of an email that we sent out before the Shattuck event. So basically all those things that was mentioned, your name, your grad years are extremely important, right? The club team you play on, what number you are, is helpful. So they don't have to wait around for the profile sheet when they sit down at a game. Reaching out to express an interest, showcasing something that makes you interested in them. So this one, I want to pursue a degree in biomedical engineering and you have a good program for it. And then,
Krystle,
yeah.
right now it's just showing the Gopher Sports soccer page.
Oh, no.
Show a different page.
Yes.
So I'm not sure what happened.
Thanks, Skylar.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh, am I kicked out? I'm gonna figure this Zoom out. Wow.
Did it freeze up on you?
Yeah, my Zoom thing says, There we go. Does that work?
Yes.
We're in it. Okay. Okay, so this is the email. All right, notes that I want to pursue a degree in biomedical engineering and they have a good program, but also that I researched your team and like valued something that you guys value, right? And then something here to get them to be drawn to you, right? Played forward, also played a little bit midfield, shows a little versatility, and then I was a goal scorer. And then attached would be my player profile. You can also say attached as my highlight video, so you can get a sense for how I play. And then this is my next event that I'd be playing at. Okay, and then the last thing I kind of want to go over and show is the questions that we came up with. See if I can get it back to where that's an option. Okay, so these are some of the questions. I divided them out on potentially where you are with them. So if you're in an initial conversation and they haven't seen you play, maybe some of these questions to get to know the program better and the academic understanding better would be a good starting point. So just asking them maybe some of these, I won't read them all off, but a lot about their philosophy, their coaching styles, how their team is on and off the field, kind of what the status of their program at this point, how they interact with their players, how they like to communicate with their players, what can you do to be among those, which is kind of more down here. But also maybe some academic questions. What are how do they rate academics, or how do they feel like that balance goes? Are professors helpful and accommodating if you have to travel and miss class? Right? What are the kind of the majors that people graduate in? Are there any majors that the school offers that you don't allow, right? Or student athletes aren't capable of doing because of the demands, right? Some questions like that. And then if you are inquiring about how to get evaluated, right? Because they haven't evaluated you yet, just asking about that. Maybe they'll tell you have to come to camp. Maybe they're going to be at an event that you'll be at by the end of the year. So you can make sure they know your schedule before that. And then if they have seen you, here's some extra questions where maybe you get a little more better sense of how you fit. And some will tell you directly, and some will kind of try to keep it pretty vague. But whenever you get to the point where you have to know because maybe someone else is telling you have to make a decision, just communicate that. Because sometimes people aren't, programs are all operating at different speeds for when they kind of close their recruiting classes. So you can't be afraid to protect yourself a little bit by asking a direct, okay, how do you see us fit? Or do you know at this point I have a decision I have to make? Or how likely is it that I'd be invited to be in your program or something along those lines? You're allowed to be a direct, and they'll hopefully give you a direct answer back, or at least tell you a timeline for when they can give you a direct answer. And then the last one is if you do end up getting on campus, or if they link you up somehow with one of their student athletes, maybe some questions to dig in deeper about how the team chemistry is from their perspective, or what the relationship is with their coach, how they feel about their experience, right? Some of those questions, a little more in depth. Okay, and I think that is all I really wanted to cover today. Skylar, I don't know if you have anything else that you would like us to hit, or Annabelle, if you have any questions.
Yeah, I would like to share, just to kind of pick up on your point earlier, looking at the roster and trying to get a feel for what types of opportunities there's going to be to actually contribute. And you make a really good point, Krystle. Ideally, in an ideal world, you can get a direct answer from the coach, and they'll tell you, what they anticipate for you if they're looking at adding you to their program. But it might be worthwhile just thinking and understanding yourself too, and what type of an experience you're looking for. I know for me personally, I went to and joined a team, Gustavus, the year after they had gone to the national championship, and the coach had been awarded National Coach of the Year. He was an older guy. He'd been there for 20 years, and that excited me. I wanted to be a part of a successful program that I knew it was going to be a bit of a challenge to go in, and I did end up having to put in a couple years playing on the JV team and earn my way on. Could have been a completely different experience going to a different school in the MIAC, like a Hamlin or a Concordia, where could have gone on and contributed right away and been playing a lot more. But I think for me, that wouldn't have been as rewarding of an experience to play a lot, but be on a team that was finishing bottom half of the table. And it's just something to kind of understand about yourself. And then if you can, try to find some people who really know the conference that you're looking at, or if it's D3, D2, or D1, and find somebody who can be honest with you and let you know kind of where, your opportunities really lie. Like, would you play for University of Minnesota if they're winning the Big Ten? Like, is that realistic for you, or is it more realistic that you'd be waiting? And just really reflecting on that would be my advice.
Yeah. And I think some of the coaches would be able to, your club coaches could help in those scenarios too, kind of direct you in some of those right places. I know I told my club coach I committed to where I did without really warning, or he didn't really even know I was in the conversation. And his response to me was, I'm worried about you because I don't think you're going to play, and I don't know how you're going to feel about that. And I thanked him for that because I refused to believe it. But he did at least paint that picture for me, like, this is going to be a stretch and you're going to have to be prepared to work really hard to be able to raise to that level. So he just helped confirm that I was probably under prepared at the time, but right, there was an opportunity to continue to grow and and get better by the time, usually when you commit to a program, and when you actually go to that program, there is a gap, right? Maybe it's months, maybe it's years, sometimes, or a year where you can decide to increase your training, right, and help prepare. But it's good to know that, like where you think you're going to fit and what you're willing kind of to do from there. Okay, that is all we have for the meeting. Unless, Annabelle, you want to answer or ask a question. Did you write in this chat? No.
I just have one question. So if I already like sent an introduction email and then like they send like come to our camp or something because I'm a 2022, if I want them to come to something again, would I introduce myself the same way, or would I say like something about my previous email, or what should I say?
Yeah, I would say, hey, I'm reaching out again. I reached out to you before this last event. And I would even, just because of the way Google kind of sorts it now, I would put it on your last strand. So like all your contacts with them stay kind of in that same email strand, so they can click on you and say, okay, we've had this interaction back and forth, 6 times she's written me before events, or whatever it ends up being, that accumulates. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. Did you watch our thing yesterday at all?
A little bit, actually.
Okay. One of the things for sure for the 2022s is, hopefully this is just like a minor time lifted, and it's not going to be, the entirety of the season. So, fingers crossed, but that could be a reality. So the big thing is you're probably missing a few opportunities to get evaluated. So potentially forming a highlight video, if you have access to that, is going to be helpful. But then also knowing that your class timeline might just look a little different. Like typically they're ready to go June 15th with the 2022s to communicate and start to figure out who they're going to be bringing on campus by August. But just with the nature of this year, that might be pushed to in the fall. They're going to start, right, reevaluating or figuring out how to get to more games in the fall, if that ends up being when it gets lifted, or in the winter even. So whereas before a lot of juniors are making decisions in their first semester, for your class, it might be that more juniors are making it second semester. So it just might be pushed back a little bit. Okay. So don't get alarmed if June 15th hits and there's not a ton of communication coming from them. Don't be alarmed.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for asking a question. Super important. When you go on visits or when you get on phone calls, you need to be comfortable asking questions. So it's good that you were able to do that today.
Yeah, kudos to you, Annabelle. I just have a question for you, Annabelle, if you're willing to share. Where are you at with your recruiting process? Have you made contact with coaches? Have you been seen by coaches, or where are you at?
I have contacted a bunch of coaches for like showcases, and then just if I had games that I wanted them to come to. And I've been to a few camps. So I got evaluated by Minnesota Gophers, and I went to like those exact camps with all of those different coaches to kind of introduce myself, and so that I could kind of be on their radar, because there's a lot of coaches there. But that's basically as far as I've gotten so far.
How big is your list that you're kind of considering still? The big?
It's pretty big at the moment. I haven't like visited any schools, so I don't know kind of what kind of school I like.
Yep.
But I hope to do that soon when this ends. But
yeah, that's the best thing you can do is, even when you guys travel as a team, potentially, right, what local schools are in the area, can I just walk a few campuses, and you can kind of get a sense for what campuses excite you versus ones that you maybe are less interested in. You got time.
Yeah.
You have to have it all figured out yet. Someday. Okay, well, we'll conclude the meeting here then. Thank you for being on the call. Those of you that are kind of watching it recorded, if you have any questions, you can reach out to Skylar or I at our Salvo email addresses. Anything else, Skylar?
Nope. Great job, Krystle. Annabelle, thanks a ton for signing on and taking that initiative and responsibility to learn more about recruiting and help yourself. So kudos to you, and to anybody who's watching the recording. Absolutely reach out to me if you're on the boys side, or Krystle if you're on the girls side, and we're here to help you. So good luck.